welcome back. We are Cammie and Sarah, your hosts of Hearties Hotline, and today we are covering episodes 4 and 5 of season 2, Heart's Desire and Heart of the Family. So let's just dive right in. Let's start with Abigail Goes to Hamilton. Sounds like its own movie title.
Right?
I know. But this is a really, really interesting way to get Abigail in Hamilton where all the action is. I thought it was a clever way to get her into it without saying, "Oh, let's put Lori Loughlin where all the action is happening."
It made sense. It followed it. I mean, I was wondering from the very beginning when Clara left to go back to Hamilton, like Abigail doesn't offer for her to stay, really. There is really not even a like, well, please stay in contact. I mean, I think she kind of said something about staying in contact, but it was very glossed over. And I was just like, my gosh, you just found out you have this other family member. I would have expected more. So it didn't surprise me that they added this in, but it was kind of like that happy, like, oh, good, they're following up and we get to see, what's going on, because you could tell there was something unsaid about what was happening in Clara's life. Mm-hmm. So it was really nice to see that follow up.
Yeah.
And to have that involve Elizabeth and have Abigail and Elizabeth have a few of those bonding moments at the same time.
So to have those Coal Valley / Hope Valley moments in Hamilton, I thought not only was it good for Abigail, but it was very good for Elizabeth. It kind of brought her back to earth, if you will.
Yes, and gave a lot of insight to Abigail about what was happening for Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. Because I think, especially right off the bat in one of those very early scenes, she gets the flowers from Charles.
Yeah.
And she's like, who's Charles?
Who's Charles?
And up until then, she didn't know that, what was kind of going on with Jack and Elizabeth. So I think that helped her to be more able to give advice to Elizabeth.
Right. And once again, I completely forgot when Elizabeth says, we'll find Clara together. I kind of had something go off in my brain. Oh, right. She doesn't even know who Clara is, really. I mean, she obviously knows who she is from a letter or a telegram from Abigail, but she's never laid eyes on her yet. And I thought, oh, right, Elizabeth hasn't met this person, which it goes back to the giving, generous, desperate to help nature that Elizabeth has. She immediately tells Abigail to come. She immediately says, we'll find Clara together. She takes it upon herself, which does not surprise us about Elizabeth. It's just in an altered location and an altered manner. And speaking of the altered location, I love Lori's reaction to the train station. She's never
so beautifully filmed. I loved the way they kind of panned, and yeah.
She's gazing up and she doesn't even see Elizabeth until Abigail. Elizabeth! Oh, right. I'm meeting somebody here. I'm not just staring at the opulence. How hard did you laugh the first time you watched when she says, are you sure there's enough room? I don't want to impose. Oh, it's no imposition.
And then she sees their house.
And she says, oh, that's why there was no imposition. It was really good, not only to put Abigail in a new environment, but just like putting Jack in Elizabeth's environment, now Abigail understands. And she can more fully focus her words and her guidance and her Abigail wisdom, that we like to call it, around the two different perspectives, because the wisdom grows with the circumstances. After she has a chance to see, she says to Elizabeth, I'm surprised that you moved away from all this. I'm surprised that you don't miss home more. And so, it gives Elizabeth a friend to talk to who's removed from the situation, because let's face it, Jack is
but
not
has
removed
enough
from
understanding.
Yeah, Jack is not removed from the situation. He very much is hinged on the idea of her coming back to Hope Valley.
Right.
So,
and I also loved, it didn't really occur to me till later when you see what doesn't get revisited, but I love the fact that she met both of her parents, because she doesn't interact with Elizabeth's mother again. Since that is since her mother's only in season 2 visually. Right. So I think that for me, that's nice to just know that she had that contact, and I think that's gives her more of an understanding and ability to kind of mentor Elizabeth at times through some situations, kind of knowing what her upbringing has been like.
Well, and the other thing that I think it really showed is, with William Thatcher, there is an immediate concern. There's an immediate concern. I understand you're looking for your daughter-in-law. Instantly, just like Elizabeth, he wants to help. You're not a threat to my daughter's future, so yes, I'm happy to help you. Sorry.
I'm gonna fight you on that one, but I think it's great. I think it shows this episode, especially in multiple places. I was really impressed with her parents, even though they pushed in a few spots, and Elizabeth had to push back, which I think was what was needed. They needed to see her show what was important to her, so they could understand it. But I felt like even everything they said when they kind of pushed, everything made sense. Everything was very for her and what is best for you. And they never once said, don't do this, don't do that. They said, maybe it's time for this. Maybe this is what is next. And also what I loved is her mom was, after we talked a lot about this in the last episode, her mom was sitting a lot and really being very, very, she was not active at all.
Invalid.
She was very much taking it easy and resting quite a bit. But what I loved was when it came right down to it and Dad was kind of pushing it, Mom's the ones that steps up and really is like firm that we are going to support you no matter what. And she's the one that was very vocal, and Dad just kind of stopped talking. It was just like, well, Mom has spoken.
Good idea, Dad.
Mom has spoken. That's the message we're going with.
Well, and it's interesting because remember how I said that Elizabeth's trip to Coal Valley was kind of like her backpacking trip to Europe. It was her find yourself year. He even says, Hope Valley was never meant to be permanent. And then Elizabeth, like you said, fights back with, can you at least respect this is what I have to do? And then Mom comes in, of course, wherever you are, you have our support, which was really important for her to know. It was, definitely necessary.
Definitely. And jumping back to the earlier scene, though, I can't let us not say this. When they're talking about helping Abigail when they first meet her, and William Thatcher says, I have connections with the Mounties.
You don't say!
Biggest understatement of season 2. Huh, you do? Okay.
That's why Jack was transferred at the request of a very powerful man.
I would have liked to have just seen like a little like eye roll or like from Mom or Elizabeth at that moment.
That would have been funny. So let's kind of go to the Abigail and Bill part of this. There's not as much to talk about.
It was very subtle, but it was a good way to move the story forward a little bit. Because you have to remember at this time, Bill is showing up to help her, thinking this is kind of his girlfriend. This is kind of the girl he's been seeing, right? Like last time he saw her, there was a big passionate kiss.
That was the last time he saw her, and
so how great that when he's doing whatever he's doing right now, which we don't know at this point, how great is it that he took time away from that to be like, oh, I have to go see her and help her.
Yeah, it would have gone even better if a certain incident hadn't happened in Hope Valley.
There's that.
But it's so interesting. I love when characters say things in ignorance, because it really shows the point of view, and it shows the perspective that they're coming from, and it reminds us of the perspective that they're coming from. And, you know, we have a saying in the theater world, don't play the end. And when characters have guilty knowledge, it kind of takes away the realism. So when Elizabeth says, I'm just so glad that you had Bill, I'm just so glad that you had Bill Avery to lean on for support. He must have been such a comfort. Oh dear, we have a lot to catch. And then obviously we don't see them catching up on Bill. There's not enough screen time for her to fix Jack's and Elizabeth's relationship and to talk about her and Bill. You know, so, but it's obvious when Bill does come to the Thatcher home that Elizabeth
knows.
Yeah.
And might I add, it's pretty obvious that Charles is aware as well.
Oh my gosh, I missed that.
Oh, there is a look on his face that is very protective of Abigail, even. Like, he doesn't even really know her, but he knows she's very important to Elizabeth, and clearly a little bit has been shared with him because he is the one that's offering, well, I can take them when it's clear that Abigail doesn't want to go.
Yeah, I can take them, or I can go with you. That part did not pass me by.
Because quite honestly, why else? He would not just, he'd be like, this is a Mountie, go with him. That'd be great. That's where you're going to be the safest. And it's obviously a bad part of town. And I want to just throw that in there too. I was super impressed with the staging of this bad area of town, and the very first shot that they did of it with the fire escape, and there's like all this like laundry, like ratty old laundry hanging from the fire escape, and it really set the mood because you're coming from this very high society area of town, and you're kind of like, oh, it's across the train tracks, like how bad could it be? And they did a great job.
That's where the saying comes from.
It is, but it seemed too cliche. So I was like,
no, I know.
So like they really did a good job of setting that stage for the vast contrast between the two areas.
They also did a really good job with, once Bill knew what the situation was, he really slipped into the Mountie role instead of the boyfriend role, which he is not being permitted to slip in. And
he did. And I thought Jack Wagner did a great job of really acting that. Like you could see that he was hurt, but still trying to be professional because he was there technically in a professional capacity.
Right. Yeah. When he says, with all due respect, Abigail, I know how to deal with men like Mr. Fletcher. Let me handle it. Has anyone ever talked to Abigail like that before? I don't think even Gowan has talked to her like that before.
Right. But then also once she saw what was happening with Clara, and even though she started to kind of fight him on it, I think it was starting to really occur to her that this is a much bigger situation. This is, even though I want to handle it myself, I think she's realizing that she can't handle it herself.
Yeah, she backed down graciously. She let the old saying, let the police handle it. She did. She let the police handle it, even though she didn't want that policeman to handle it.
Exactly. If it had been anybody else, she wouldn't have been fighting to do it herself. She was just resenting him being there.
Okay, so there are two more parts of Hamilton that I want to talk about. Let's talk about Julie and Tom, the two black sheep of the family, if we must. I know. Oh, these two. I remember watching with such exasperation.
That's a great word. Like they're just those brash crazy kids. Like they're the younger siblings that are always getting in the way on TV shows, that are just like, the older siblings are like, I can't believe you did that. And the looks on, I loved the scene with Viola and Elizabeth where they're both kind of rolling their eyes about what she's doing about Julie.
And when Julie bursts into Elizabeth's bedroom, you'll never guess where I've been. And then Viola's like, where exactly have you been? And come on, I can't remember the exact line, but I have a perfect view of the side door where you snuck out of.
Right. Yes. It's just, if there was anything that Viola and Elizabeth could agree on, it's that Julie needs to rein it in a little bit.
That is such a good point, because they don't agree on much.
They don't agree on very much.
And she was trying so hard. Elizabeth was trying so hard, saying, I'm so happy for you. You two make a lovely couple. I can't believe one of us is getting married. It seems so sudden and grown up. And then, Viola, of course, says, well, that's the way it's supposed to happen. Okay, yeah, fine.
To her it is.
To her. Yeah. And this part, don't tell mother and father if they don't approve of Jack. Imagine what they think of Tom. What have they said about Jack? I was at least glad that Elizabeth got protective.
Yes. And I think it's interesting that at this stage of the game, she really is shocked to hear somebody say that her parents don't approve of him, because I think deep down she knows that they have reservations.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it really fully occurred to her that it would be a challenge to get their blessing.
Yeah, because she's Elizabeth. She's their darling daughter.
Yeah. So I do. I think that was a really interesting, I think that helped her in that moment to be like, oh, this is like, maybe that's what's going on with Jack. Maybe she's starting to have some of that information fall into place and make
right. Well, and the other thing is the fact that Julie is putting Jack and Tom on such an equal level and such an equal playing field. I just thought, no, dear. I mean, Tom Thornton is no Tolliver, but he's no Nate Tolliver.
A dramatic step up. Yeah.
It is a dramatic step up, but will this child ever learn? I am serious. She never learns. She had this horrible blown up experience where she fell in love with a man with love at first sight, as Elizabeth says, and it blew up in her face. She got held at gunpoint. She was taken hostage.
I think she did the opposite of what she should have done, though. I think it's one of those situations where you can do one of two things after a negative experience. You can like really, really learn from it and go like the total opposite and be really, really careful. Or you can see something that's, so much better and just be like, well, in comparison, it's great. And I don't think she realized she's doing it. But if you're like, well, the last guy I dated held me at gunpoint and kidnapped my sister.
This guy doesn't look so bad.
This guy, his brother is a Mountie who's one of the greatest, most honest persons that I've ever met. So he's from that family. This is so much better.
Why do you have to be so dang smart? No, it's a gift. No, that is, I do believe so. That is what Julie is thinking.
And she's she's still very immature. She has not had a lot of life experience. So, and she's clearly looking to rebel against what her parents hope for her and and her parents are clearly a little bit pushier with her than the other two daughters, probably because she pushes back. But if they're always telling her to do these high society things, she's pushing back and she's wanting to do whatever they don't want to do anyway. So she's going to continue to kind of follow that path until she sees the reason not to, and not just because someone's telling her to.
We would be remiss to cover this episode if we didn't talk about Sarah's favorite person, Charles. She's not denying it.
Yeah, well, I think he's one of my favorite aspects of season 2 because he's so different and because he doesn't, like, that's the only season we see him in. So
it's true.
It's kind of like this different dynamic that you get to have for the season. So he's not my favorite for the whole show.
I'm teasing.
But there's some really, really fun scenes with him. And I know which one you're one I want to talk about because it was quite fun near the beginning.
It was steamy. And I was mad that it was so steamy. And I know which one you want to talk about. So let's go in episodical order. Okay. So first we have the tango, which of course starts with Julie. And
it's so cute to see her. She's got all the footsteps on the floor so she can practice.
And then pulls Charles in and he goes, well, okay. And then all of a sudden he does it perfectly. Of course.
Right. Of course he does.
Of course he does.
What's hilarious is that even that surprises Elizabeth.
Because it's
Tango was very scandalous. That's not a formal, ballroom dance.
And I do love what he says. Can't I have my secrets? Like, Charles, you dirty, bad, nasty. Before we go to your favorite scene, I do want to say that I think that this was a bit of a wake-up call as well for Elizabeth, because she had to come to terms with the fact that this man is not just feeling friendship for her, and that her feelings are being battled because she felt it. She felt the chemistry. She felt the attraction, and she had to pull herself away. And she now knows more than ever, I think, that she has a decision to make.
Yeah. Something was happening there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I think she realizes she has the feelings, but she definitely was realizing he has the feelings.
You didn't see. I could tell a little bit of it.
I could tell she felt flustered.
Yeah.
But she's also someone who feels flustered very easily at this point in the show.
Very true.
And is very self-conscious about being very close to a man. And so that was a very intimate moment, and they weren't alone. So that probably made her feel more self-conscious because Julie was in the room. So I'm not saying
anybody's going to feel self-conscious with Julie in the room.
There's that. And she would make a mountain out of a molehill anyway. So she's probably like, oh boy, here Julie's going to never let me hear the end of this.
She's the Twitter of 1910.
Oh my gosh. Everyone in Hamilton now knows. But so I'm not saying she didn't have feelings for Charles in that moment. She could have. But I wasn't sure if it was also just a lot of that, like, this is more intimate than I have ever been. You know, I've never danced a tango with anyone. I've never, you know, had that kind of moment. So I'm not totally sure.
Well, let us know what you think, Hearties. Okay, your turn.
My turn. Okay, it also has something to do at the beginning of the scene with Julie, because I thought it was really interesting, the conversation that Charles and Elizabeth had about Julie and Tom, because they're walking along and Elizabeth's talking about Julie and Tom, but Charles is not. Even though he is, he's not. It is very clear very early on that he is using some analogies here to talk about them and her and Jack. And I don't think Elizabeth fully caught on to this.
No.
But to me, it was another brilliant use of writing to kind of give the viewers an idea of, like, this is really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to talk about somebody who's, I'm trying to see if I wrote down the line that I was specifically thinking of. Charles told Elizabeth, it can be hard telling someone else who to fall in love with. Sometimes it takes making a mistake or two in order for us to learn. And then Elizabeth said, but what if she gets hurt? And Charles said, as long as she has people around that love her, she'll be all right. So I think that was very true about Tom and Julie. She's not going to listen to anyone else. She has to learn. Yeah. And if there are people around that love her, she will get through it. Same for Elizabeth. And in Charles' mind, and I'm sorry, it makes Charles the sweeter person for having said this. He's clearly in love with her, but he knows that she has to do what she thinks is right. She has to learn from that. She has to follow her heart. And hopefully, in his mind, hopefully he'll be there to help her through it when she realizes it's wrong.
Yep.
But it was so sweet and yet so frustrating.
I know. It's such a conundrum.
And then to follow up that scene, the goodbye between Charles and Elizabeth, I loved. And that was actually kind of two different scenes, really. He walked in and saw the look on her face and said, "You're leaving, aren't you?"
You're leaving, aren't you? That was a very sobering and somber scene right there.
And her just saying, "I'm sorry," meaning she knows how he feels. She knows this is hurting him.
Yeah.
But I love that he was just like, don't be, even though he looked like he was going to cry. I know your search isn't over. I hope you find the answers you're looking for, no matter where it takes you.
And
if that had been the last place we saw him, we probably just would have been like, oh, sweet Charles, bye-bye.
But no, he wanted to be the one to drive them to the station because he wanted to say one last goodbye.
Had to get that in there, didn't he?
He's a glutton for punishment, this guy, really.
And again, she stops him. She knows he's about to say something. And she says, some things are better left unspoken.
Yeah. And
but what is also interesting for me is as she's walking away and he's watching her go super sadly, she doesn't turn back around.
Yeah, she's too busy.
I expected her to, because there's so much going on that she doesn't know what to do with, but she doesn't.
Well, including that kiss on her hand.
Well, yes, he was her hand. Come on. It's not like he kissed her on the cheek.
We're getting there. We're getting to that. Meanwhile, back at the ranch in Hope Valley, we have a very excited Rosemary getting offered a part in San Francisco.
Leading role.
a leading role. And we know that Lee is very, very disappointed.
Oh, you could just see him just like, he looked crushed.
I know. He was biting his tongue to keep the tears from coming.
And Rosemary didn't even seem to notice in that moment. She was worked up, so excited. Oh, and this is what I love though, is even though in that moment, like when you're watching this in season 2, you're thinking about like, how can she be self-centered and all of this? It creates such a beautiful story arc for Rosemary going through the years that she started like this.
And then so, she is where she is now.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes me love her that much more.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But these people don't work for Mr. Zegler. They work for Cliff Conley, who was the producer of one of her shows, and the director stole the cash. His name was Mike, and he dropped her like a hot stone. And so hearing word that they have his precious girlfriend isn't gonna do anything.
Yeah, at this point. These tough guys that were hired didn't really do a lot of research on what would be a best plan to get their money back.
It's when he goes, Miss Laveau! I've played this part long enough. I can't stand it anymore. You're going to be silent. I can't take your singing. I can't take it anymore.
It's so funny to me that they like stopped the car to have this conversation. And I mean, I'm sure it was just like a filming aspect. Like it probably would have been very difficult to film this in that type of moving vehicle and that type of set. But I'm just like, why? Keep going. Keep going. Don't give her an opportunity to jump out.
I disagree. I mean, sometimes you're so upset and you just have to pull over and go, will you stop it?
But the driver wasn't the one yelling at her.
At that point, I think he was.
Oh, did he start? Okay.
I think he did. I think
thought
he
it was mostly because it's is it Aaron Craven that was playing as Mr. Garvey, I think was the character. Yeah. And yeah, he's awesome. I love him and everything he does. I thought that was hilarious to just see the dynamic of this. Like, she's just singing a song and
no, she's singing a very high note for a very long period of time, which can get very annoying. So.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
And trust me, I've been that person who's singing and people get annoyed. So I'm sorry, I'll stop. And Jack finds out because we have another guest star, Lane Edwards. This was so much fun. I was so happy.
I did a double take because I forgot that was the same episode.
Yeah. That
Aaron Craven and Lane Edwards were both in because they're both so great. And I was like, oh, that's the same. What?
Yeah, it's Lane Edwards with Aaron Craven in the same episode, although they don't share screen time. But
right.
So Jack finds out that Mr. Duncan, that's his name, has come from Benson Hills to get all the licenses that Gowan is piling on Lee. We'll get to that in a minute. And he figures out, because Jack is so smart, that that is not the way to San Francisco. And so he rushes off and he saves her. Of course he does.
Of course he does.
And yeah, and she still doesn't quit even after the experience that she's been through. It does cause her to put some thoughts into perspective, but I don't mind spending the evening with my Mountie hero. I'm like, oh, honey, give a rest.
Right.
She does get serious when she says, why didn't things work out between us? I love his answer. He could have said hundreds of things, but he says, because of things like this. You running off with men you don't know for the promise of fame. Whatever you have just isn't good enough. I mean, that's
and
profound.
he doesn't even. It was perfect. And what I loved was I was like expecting him to say something more pointed, like I wasn't good enough for you, or something very specific. And he didn't.
Or you were very selfish and all of your attitudes or something like that. Yeah.
But it was great because all of the interactions they had in season 1, even though that was like when that conversation probably should have happened, like, I'm not getting back together with you because blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
It didn't ever come up specifically in those conversations. So it was great that they addressed it, because I think it needed to be addressed, if not for the characters, for the viewers to really know why he won't go back to her. Besides the obvious that clearly she's all about herself.
Clearly.
But yeah, I thought this was really interesting, because we talked about this in the last episode, like, where is Rosemary at in her journey? Has she given up on Jack? Is she definitely pursuing Lee? Is she still kind of like, well, I might have these 2 options. I'll keep my options open. Kind of, what is her attitude? And in this episode, she really starts to sort of take a step back in this scene anyway, where you're like, you can tell she's at least missing what they had.
Yeah.
In a more profound way than like in season 1, when she's like, I'm going to get him back.
Yeah. I think that the experience of being kidnapped, even though she was passing it off with Flair, I think it scared her. And now they're all alone in the dark, in the freezing cold. And
he gave her his jacket.
He gave her his serge jacket. And he's got this tiny little thin shirt on. I feel so bad for him. But I think that all of these gestures are making her realize even more what she had with him. And I think she's just kind of doing a deeper thinking than she has. Why didn't I know things aren't going to work between us, but why didn't they? And, he puts the jacket around her and she grabs his hand. And I was nervous. I was nervous watching this for the first time. I don't know. Those exact words came out of my
those exact words.
I don't know. But when she says, Jack, just for a moment, you could almost see her saying, I messed up. This is my fault. Let me just relive this moment. Let me have peace in what we had together for one moment. And then the moment was over and he got up. So.
Yeah. But here she is. She's also bringing up Elizabeth, and she's also continually saying things about if she doesn't come back, and
yeah, that's true too.
And part of that could really just be who Rosemary is right now, is that she can't really let it go.
No. And I mean, look what she does when they go back to Hope Valley. Hello, Hope Valley. Of course she can't let it go.
Right. But I also did love that she closed all of those comments with, I want you to know that you have people that care about you if something happens.
Yeah, I think so.
I still thought there was some pointedness to it, but it was also like, that's still a good message for him to hear.
It's true. It's true. It's true. I'm not going to deny it. It's good for him to hear, although I would rather Lee say it.
Yes. Looking back, I think it was meaningful in the journey that got Rosemary to be a friend to Jack and Elizabeth.
That's very true.
And then they come back into town and she is wearing the red serge and everything, and she's making a big fuss on the horse.
And he doesn't look happy.
I love Loretta. Florence, is she wearing his clothes?
Come on now, Florence.
Like one liner just to close that scene out. It was like, that's awesome.
That's Florence Blakely for you.
Right.
All right, so let's move to the heart of the family. We start
or what most Hearties call the best episode in season 2, right?
I would not deny that. But well, no. The season 2 finale is
well, that's got a great moment in it.
That's got a lot of great moments.
It does.
It's the ending moment that we're not too fond of.
There's that.
If you just don't watch that.
People say, as a whole, if I'm talking to people and we're talking and season 2 comes up, they're like, when was the homestead episode? Everybody thought that's like what people think of as like the big full-blown episode, something that was really exciting to watch kind of from start to finish.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So we have the welcome home party for Elizabeth, which I thought was very sweet, but can we welcome home Abigail too?
I know, didn't they both come on the same train?
They did. But you know what? We're just gonna run with it. And Elizabeth meets Lee for the first time. And
she does. Yeah. I imagine this is when she meets Frank for the first time as well. But they don't show that.
Yes.
Yeah, because some new people have arrived in town since she's been gone.
Yeah, a lot of things have been happening in your absence, girl.
Right? Also, Clara came back with them, right? So this should have
Clara came back with them though. So yeah,
so this should have been a much bigger party.
Well, oh no. I was about to say they didn't know Clara, but they did. Maybe they didn't know that she was coming.
That's possible.
Yeah. But so I went back and forth in this scene between being elated and being frustrated, because I was elated when they made eyes at each other from across the room. I'm like, yes, go toward the light, which is Jack. You go toward the light, which is Elizabeth. All of that. And then he says, yeah, I just rode in from Rock Creek. It's good to see you. I was so mad. I know they're trying to find their footing. I know a lot happened.
I mean, honestly, you needed that struggle for conversation, because neither one of them really knew where they stood with the other one right now.
Like needing it.
But my biggest frustration with this scene is that he says, maybe it's not the exact same scene, it's the same party. He says, come for a walk with me. It's the same party, yeah. I know. Okay. But I'm like, oh, so close. You almost had the line, Jack.
Almost had your line.
You're so close to your own line. You should know your own line.
I mean, it hadn't completely become a thing, but it was.
It would have had become a thing if he had said it right then.
That's true.
Solidified it earlier and made it even better in season 4.
I agree. I completely agree. Yeah. When that part came up, even my husband said, oh, he got it wrong.
Right? It's the wrong line.
It's the wrong line. Yes, he says, come for a walk with me. Did you notice that? Yeah, I love that he had her close her eyes. That's just cute. It's just cute.
How did she not see it riding into town though?
I don't know.
It's a really small town.
It was covered by the bill. I don't know. We're suspending our belief. They came from the other direction. I don't know.
I'm just saying.
She was reading. She was reading a book, or she was too
whole time.
She was too engaged with Abigail and Clara in conversation. There you go. So, but when he says open, she opens and she's looking straight at him. Like,
yeah, actually, yeah.
But but I thought that was a precious moment between the two of them. Yeah, that led up to a great, solid interaction with the homestead. So why don't we talk about the homestead?
Oh,
she gets mud on 2 different skirts.
At least those are the ones we see.
I know.
Probably more.
He tries to warn her. That Mr. Harper, he tries to say, you may not want to wear something so dear to your heart. Oh, no, it's fine.
I loved Mr. Harper.
He's adorable.
I wish this character was in more episodes. I would love to have explored that a little bit more. He has such a great grasp of like reality and what
Elizabeth can't handle.
Elizabeth, and is so respectful about it, but yet still worried. But I love that whole scene with the setup where he was asking Florence and she can't watch his kids, and he's ready to leave, and Elizabeth's like, I can do it. And oh yes, of course you can. Like, I meant to ask you. You can see he's like trying to think of what he can say to seem respectful. And then
whispering to Jack.
And then the whispering to Jack, you can just check in on them, right? I don't need to be checked in on. And then he like pats Jack on the shoulder. Because again, at this point, everyone knows that there's something between Jack and Elizabeth. And he's all like, I'm sorry if I've gotten you into something here.
It wasn't my fault.
I didn't mean to. But yes, then he's warning her about the clothes, and I'm perfectly fine, and just gets so splattered with mud.
Now, we can't go without saying that we have a very special guest star appearance, Alicia Newton, who plays Georgie on Heartland. She's in this episode, which I didn't know Heartland when I watched this, and so going back and watching it again for the I don't know time, it was fun. I went, oh, it's Georgie, and I thought she was perfect in this role. And the kid who plays Patrick, I am blanking on his name, but he, a much more grown-up version of him, played in Sweet Carolina with Lacey Chabert and Tyler Hines.
Yes.
So that was fun, going back and seeing younger versions of them. And I don't know if it was because it was 4 a.m, or was she really that ignorant about what mucking out the stalls?
I think she was. I think it was a combination. That was kind of she's been woken up. She's, been awake for 10 seconds and isn't really even remembering where she is really. But I think combination. I don't think she'd probably heard the term before. Trying to process it when you're waking up.
Yeah,
wasn't working for her. But
I was like, mucking out the stalls. Come on.
I think you can figure that out.
I thought so. I thought it was pretty obvious. And then, don't you notice that there's more than one stall?
That was the part where I was just like, okay, you've been awake now. You're cleaning. There's a certain number of stalls around you.
Oh my gosh. And give me a moment, because the knight in faded denim comes riding up to help her with the pump. And this is just
it's such a fond memory. I often think of the water pump scene.
Oh, good. It's not just me. I think I need to get my fan. It's getting a little warm in here. But he practically cuddles up to her at the water pump of all things.
Is this really necessary?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, so cute. So cute. And then when he bears the bad tidings that Mr. Harper's been delayed for a day, that's why I'm here. It just I think that deep down, no matter how independent you are, every woman likes being supported and knowing that somebody's got their back. And it really helps when that someone is a really handsome man that you're attracted to. So
it's a bonus. Yeah.
bonus.
He's also very good at offering support and not taking over.
Yeah. Oh, Jinx. And then we have the signature Jack dirt wife that changes everything into a smile. And then he demonstrates his true love once again when he has her hearty vegetables. This poor guy, he is getting subjected to so many food disasters.
Well, and the kids were pretty good about her cooking as well.
Yeah.
What do you call this? I think one of them said.
Yeah, that's what Patrick said. What do you call this? It's hearty vegetable stew. Well, it hardly compares to your chicken fried steak. Very funny. And then he wins extra brownie points and completely erases the chicken fried steak comment when he says, I suppose I could have a little more. It's just so
Which
cute.
does probably mean it is better than the chicken fried steak, because I don't know. I don't think they wanted extra of that.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. It's, I suppose I could have a little more. I think he's being kind again.
The biscuits weren't rock hard like in season 1. They were able to eat the biscuits. So he is making progress.
He is making progress. Why don't you take the fireplace talk?
The fireplace talk.
I'll start you off. Jack is watching Elizabeth help Patrick go to sleep.
The sweetest. Is there anything better in a TV show when somebody's watching from the doorway as someone's helping somebody, like a little kid, go to bed? It's always the sweetest scene, right?
That's how I imagined it looking like when somebody fell in love with me. Of course, I saw things.
Gotta be, because I'm like helping someone and they're watching in the doorway.
I remember a scene from the 1995 movie The Saint, and it with Val Kilmer and Elizabeth Shue. And there's this part where he's playing a character, but he's watching her get very, very passionate about cold fusion. And it's doing a tight shot
on the movie, but it's been a really long time. I'm trying to remember this.
You're doing a tight shot on his face, and he's just completely in awe of her knowledge and her passion. And she's talking in the background of the camera. And then all of a sudden he realizes what's going on and he gets up and leaves. And I was like, that's what it's going to look like when someone falls in love with me. And so, I don't think that my husband saw me in a camera lens, but
we could follow up with him later and find out if it was like that. Yeah. Okay. Look into that. So Patrick is scared of the dark, and Elizabeth is comforting him, and Jack just has that natural lean in, and he just looks at her with such admiration, right? Like, this is, it was so sweet. So then he goes out and he's sitting by the fire, and she comes out. And now we get to actually find out something big about Jack's past, about his childhood and growing up. We knew already that his dad had passed away. Mm-hmm. We know that he has a brother. Mm-hmm. But that's about it. I don't think we know very much else.
No, that's not it.
He's talking about his uncle.
His mom was a teacher.
We did, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
We did know his mom was a teacher. But now he talks about his uncle taking them in, living on a ranch with his uncle, and that really gave his mom time to grieve after they lost his dad, and allowed the boys to get into a lot of trouble on the ranch. But the biggest thing I think that comes out here is that the uncle offered the ranch to Jack, which is interesting. Again, no mention of Tom here. I'm not sure if that's Tom didn't show much interest in it, or just because Jack's older. Obviously, when Jack didn't take it, Tom still didn't either.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what's going on there, but
we still get to hear a dream of Jack's.
We get to hear something, yeah, like maybe I will have a farm of my own one day.
Children running up and down the stairs.
And the infamous curling up by a warm fire with someone I love.
And then she's fallen asleep to the soothing sound of his voice, and he could not look more content.
Right? They do fire scenes so well on this show.
They do fire scenes so incredibly well on this show. Which brings us to the morning. And Patrick has missed chores because he got some very needed sleep, which, nobody's upset about. And then Jack comes in with the load of firewood, and Elizabeth asks how he slept. And the floor in the barn is softer than my bed at the gym. The poor guy doesn't even get the couch. So there's no thought of impropriety going on. He sleeps on the floor in the barn. Bless his heart.
I was going to ask though too, because Elizabeth slept on the couch the first night.
Yeah.
So maybe she was sleeping on the couch.
Yeah. The question is did she fall asleep on the couch, or is she sleeping on the couch because she doesn't feel right taking Mr. Harper's bed, even in his absence?
Correct. But at the same time, she fell asleep on the couch the second night too, with Jack there, and then he left, I assume, just like helping her lay down on the couch.
Yeah.
Before he went to the barn.
Probably.
That was my kind of interpretation, is that she's sleeping on the couch. So,
and then there's just you gotta snicker when was there another option? No.
He giggled so great in the scene, which is, I think, shows just their comfort with each other, because even a line like that a few episodes earlier, I think would have really
shocking.
Like, she would just, you don't talk about inappropriate things, you just don't. And so I think that they just were just showing this amazing comfort with each other, which was needed after previous couple episodes with them.
So much. Yeah. Okay. Then with Jack and Elizabeth, we go to the end. Jack's disappointed because he doesn't think that she'll need any more writing lessons, but that's the fluff of the scene. We get into the real heart of the scene when he says how proud he is. I mean, when he said those words, "I'm proud of you," that's almost as good as "I love you" right there.
Well, and I think he knows his audience, right? He knows that this was a big deal for her. This was really hard for her, and she was trying to prove herself.
Yeah, he explains that. He makes it very well known to her that he understands that she had to do this, and that she showed herself as well as other people that she could handle something like that. And then we have the first day of school, when we find out that the Harper's cow has had a name change from Gertrude to Lizzie. Has a nice ring to it. And speaking of ring,
yeah, Jack ordered something for Elizabeth, but it didn't come in yet.
He ordered a teacher bell, but it hasn't come yet. So in the meantime, we have to have something to honor her accomplishments.
Yeah, because it's not like she's taught school for an entire year without any sort of bell. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that cowbell and the look on her face when she starts ringing it.
So I have to just, I mean, I know obviously I'm not the only person that feels this way, but I am so glad that they kept the cowbell. Like,
I am so glad
in
too.
this episode, it was just a funny joke. It could very easily have just been passed over, and every other, and just like a magical teacher bell arrives in the next episode, and they never.
Well, he says he ordered it, but we never.
But I mean, like, she could just start ringing a teacher bell and never mention that here this bell finally came that he had ordered, or they couldn't completely gloss over it and move on and have her have a teacher bell and have it not hardly ever even be rung on camera and not have it be a thing. Right. But instead they ran with it.
They ran with it. And I want to put in a personal note that when I was pregnant with my son, Jack, Sarah, even when she was far away, she helped plan a baby shower. And to start the shower, my friend, Shanna, rang a cowbell. So it was brilliant. It was perfect.
It was perfect. So it's a great way. And I mean, I think we still saw it in season 8. I still think we saw the cowbell. So again, just another piece of continuity that take one simple little thing and keep it. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing I think Hearties love, is that there is that continuity. There is that callback to previous things. And you're able to, like, every time you see that, you're just like, that's from Jack, that's based on the homestead, that's, token from season 2, another reason why season 2 is great.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling. All right, let's talk about Lee for a second. Lee is having a lot of trouble in this episode. He solved the problem of the diesel engine that he was having in the previous episode. Yeah, with
I just
miraculous means.
I want to throw out some fabulous. I loved the scenes between Lee and Frank. I thought there was so much playfulness, but yeah, really that undertone of a very serious nature. Yeah, it's very clear that Lee has not spent time in a church recently. For several years, it kind of sounded like. Yeah. Didn't really have a lot of faith. Puts a lot of faith in himself, and just probably has not had a lot of other people to depend on. Probably hasn't had a lot of great luck when not depending on himself. And as the seasons go on, we learn a lot more about Lee's past and why that might be. But in this season, you're just kind of getting to know him, and to see him building the church when he's not a very spiritual person, to see him playing darts with Frank and Jack in the saloon.
And his reaction to the ringer.
It's just kind of nice to see him kind of making friends, letting other people in, starting to trust other people, becoming part of that community. And then as that just happened to happen, ending up letting Frank say a prayer about the sawmill and needing some help and kind of letting go of that need to control it all and being like, well, it couldn't hurt. Yeah, you're right, it couldn't hurt. And then the look on his face when somebody just walks right in who happens to be a diesel mechanic, exactly what he needs to get the saw running.
And Jack saying, so I guess we'll be seeing you in church on Sunday. And speaking of Lee and Jack, you see a deepening of their relationship, because not only is Lee making friends and learning to trust people, but he's forming alliances. I mean,
alliance is the perfect word by the end of this episode.
I know, because he is fed up. I would be too, by the way. He is fed up with the junk that Gowan is throwing at him, just bleeding him out for money, trying to break him.
I mean, at one point, I like when Leah's like, should I make the check out to you, to Gowan, or
to the city, or to your personal account?
Are you depositing this in your account? He makes it very well known that he knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. He's gonna play the game because he is here for the long haul. But and then the line that he says to Gowan also, I'm gonna do more for this town than you ever did.
Mm-hmm. And then how Gowan sabotages the spur line idea. So we have railroad talk all the way back in season 2.
And I had semi forgot about that by the time we got to
me too.
4 with the big railroad, overarching plot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was started in season 2 and one underhanded. Gowan happens to know the guy, happens to have gotten the railroad guy his first job.
Yeah.
Like, how does he have all these connections everywhere?
He's a powerful and scheming man. And when Jack and Lee are in the saloon saying, how do we get rid of him? And Jack says, are you prepared to lose everything you've worked so hard for? And he said, I'm not going to lose anything so long as you're watching my back. And he holds up his glass and says, yes. And Jack just sits back, clinks the glass, and seals the deal right there. Yes, I'm going to have your back, which is at this point a huge, huge undertaking to take on the mayor, especially a mayor as powerful as Gowan.
And I think it really shows who Jack is with his character, because he is a by the book kind of person. And in other scenes, and I can't remember if this is something, because I've seen all the seasons so many different times, I can't remember if this is something that we just saw recently or if this is coming up later in the season or in season 3 or 4. But there are scenes when I think Gowan approaches Jack at some point and kind of, alludes to like, you need to follow the law here. And
that was in season 1.
Thank you. Yes. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was for the eviction of the widows. You need to follow the letter of the law here if it comes down to it. And Jack is very clear that he will follow the letter of the law, but he's also going to find every loophole possible to do the right thing, and support the right people, even if he has to do what he thinks isn't the perfect right thing to follow the letter of the law. So it's really interesting to follow him.
It's the next right thing, to quote Frozen 2.
But yeah, that just really gets me, is that this was the first time I really felt like he was doing what could be construed as sneaky, kind of like
underhanded. Definitely.
I know 100% he's not going to break a law. But it felt very different for Jack to be going this direction. And so, it's big and it's important, and he knows the significance of doing that.
Okay, to close up, I'm going to read a line and you are going to say who said it. Okay? Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Mrs. Ramsey, when was the last time Mr. Ramsey took you in his arms and told you that he loved you? When was the last time he kissed you so deeply that your body tingled all over?
Well, that would be the newspaper columnist, Ask Mary Rose. That entire scene, oh my gosh, those ladies' reaction, just their physical facial expressions and reactions to everything.
Margaret Burns, I thought better of you.
Everything that she said was just like terrifying.
I loved that Florence was the one being downright blunt, saying, "You're going to cause a mighty fine ruckus. This is not San Francisco. This isn't London. This isn't New York." Mm-hmm. And Dottie is saying, "I don't think that the readership here is ready for such progressive thoughts."
Yes, perhaps you should ease into your column. Which is interesting, since in this same episode, Dottie's being a little sneaky herself.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about progressive thought. She's totally being sneaky and underhanded and is going to work for Gowan. Come on.
She's taking care of herself.
That's
looking
very
out.
true.
She's looking out for number one, and she's like, my husband's not even here. He had to leave town to sell ice boxes because we've been run out, and my only option is to turn to the person who has ruined our lives.
Yeah, how would that be, to be in that position? Ugh. Yuck. I don't like that idea at all. And that is where we will pick up next time. So you all have yourselves a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you might be joining us. And we shall see you next time. Bye.